Go ahead, we're recording.
I call to order the workshop for Bullhead City Elementary School Board on Thursday, February 20th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. Secretary, roll call.
Corey Burgess,
Here.
Brandy Dubois,
Here.
Doug Lutz,
Here.
Jeannie Borland.
Here.
We have for our workshop, item 2.1, calendar review, the fiscal year 2021.
Mr. President, you have before you two samples. One is, excuse me, is essentially the same calendar that was adopted by the CRUSH board with some minor changes that I'll go over in a minute, and then another calendar, and the main difference between the two is that calendar B starts and ends a week later. So for calendar A, which is the revised version of the high school's approved calendar, the differences are in July, we're recommending adding the 17th as part of new teacher, and then having the 22nd as returning teachers. The high school the high school has 20, 21, 22 for new teachers, and 23, 24, 27, 28 for returning teachers. We have so many things that are mandated in addition to the things that we know we need to do this year, that 4 days was just not going to be enough. So we put that one in. The second change is adding an additional professional development day in each August and September. So there would be 2 each of those months. The third change involves parent conferences for both October and February. Both of those sets of conferences would be a week later than the ones on the high school calendar. And then the only other change is, from the high school calendar, is that we would start any of our summer things the week before Memorial Day, rather than having a week off in between. And so the high school has that week off on their calendar, and we would just start right away. Hopefully then we wouldn't lose kids to, whatever we could keep them. So those are the changes, the differences to the high school's calendar.
And we're doing our parent-teacher conferences evening and morning.
Everyone liked the idea of on the 21st of October and the 24th of February, we have a shortened day of school for students, conferences into the evening, and then on the 22nd of October and the 25th of February, we would have morning conferences with parents, no students at all, and staff would leave by noon. So that way they have a 3.5 day weekend.
And that'll accommodate parents that are working evenings and mornings. They can pick either one.
Exactly. Then we have all the times covered.
I like that they don't have to go to a PD day the next morning also, as in the past, I know that teachers had to work late and then go to a Friday PD or training at their sites or somewhere the next morning, so that's good too.
Yes.
That the Friday's just no school for anybody.
Right.
And calendar A was the calendar that they recommended.
The meet and confer group, that was the classified folks, so that would be bus drivers, clerical, health attendants, teacher aides, because they're not on 26 pay, and they're only paid the times that, in the pay periods that they work. It doesn't really affect them, and the whole thing of missing a payday in July is an issue for our certified people. So the classified people said they're good with either calendar. Principals actually kind of liked B because of starting a week later and that kind of thing. But at the end of the discussion this week with the teacher, the certified meet and confer, because that came, there was a split on that. The elementary schools overwhelmingly favored calendar A, and the middle school in Fox Creek preferred calendar B. But at the end of the day, they all agreed to, that they could live with A. They were either really in favor of it or they could live with it.
When they were given the calendars to vote on, it showed the PD days 2 August and 2 in September.
When I presented to them the other day, we had talked about it, and we talked about it even the other day, and it wasn't really a vote, it was a conversation, but, yeah, I had said we needed, and that's why they had calendars C, was to show them where we wanted to add those days. So it was always part of the conversation. When I gave them the samples on Tuesday this week, I had forgotten to actually put them on the calendar. So the first thing I did as soon as I realized that was I shot them an email and said, I know we talked about this, I'm putting it on the calendars, here's your updated calendar. We have training for Engage New York for the upper grade levels that they did not get when we started that program. We have ongoing training for Eureka Math for all grade levels. We will be implementing a new science curriculum next year, new science materials, and there has to be professional development for that. Last year's legislature mandated suicide prevention training and mandated training for dyslexia. So to try to fit all of those things in and the other things that we know we need to do. So for instance, we plan on September 4th to shut down the entire district. Everybody will go to training for active shooter training for that entire day. So we know we're wrapping that day up. So we just have more things we have to do this year that we need the additional training.
September 24th?
Pardon me?
September 24th, there's not going to be any?
No, September 4th.
Okay, you said 24th.
No, the 4th. That regular monthly, the first Friday of the month.
All right. Any other questions?
Well, I like calendar A because it starts on the same day as the high school starts, and that's more accommodating for families with older children and younger children, so they're on basically the same schedule and don't have to worry about alternate health childcare. I just wonder if the same thing would be an issue for the summer school starting right away versus the high school taking that week off in between. So that's the only.
Well, the thing is, the younger kids would be in school, so they wouldn't need they wouldn't need the siblings at home.
But if they start a week later, they won't be home the second week. And
They
do
have
2
four.
weeks.
They actually have 4 weeks.
Oh, they have 4
planned.
weeks,
The high
okay.
school has 4 weeks planned.
They have Boys and Girls Club though all summer. I mean, they do, that is open at that point, we do know that.
And I did check with them to make sure that, that if in fact, if you all had chosen B, or were to choose B, that Boys and Girls Club would be available in that week when high school students were already in school. And they assured me that they would work with it, with whatever calendar week that you all approved. So, yeah, I thought that was very nice. They were very accommodating about that, so. Yeah, I understand the issue might have been a key issue for that summer school thing, except for the fact that the high school is planning 4 weeks.
And they are,
That
and
makes
they do
sense.
have that alternative option, and they do scholarships, so it's not the parents that can don't have it.
Any other comments?
When we're in the workshop, does anyone out there
A
have
good many of
comments?
the committee people are here, so you can ask them what their thoughts are.
Yes.
With the calendar B, we give the secretaries who just returned to work time in the junior high and the middle school to register students and to prepare schedules. And if the calendar A was the one that's being chosen, it would not give them ample time in order to do that.
The registration times could be a problem.
Well, I think we adjust when they work, what their work schedule is.
When would they be coming back on this calendar, the same as the 22nd, same as the?
Oh, no, the school secretaries
Right.
start earlier.
So then,
Usually start, on calendar A, no later than the 13th, but probably earlier than that. On calendar B, they probably would start on the 13th, so on calendar A, they probably would start on the 6th. So we'd have to accommodate that, the need for time for them to do registrations and scheduling and that kind of thing.
President Burgess,
Yes, sir.
just want to let everybody know that I do favor calendar B. I agree with the leadership team and their reasons for going with or sponsoring, favoring calendar B. So I just want to let everybody know up front where I'm coming from.
Isn't leadership A?
No, leadership.
Oh, leadership.
I mean, I would favor calendar B too if we were
with the high school on it.
but that's a good point.
And unfortunately, the high school voted their calendar in without any discussion from us on their board, so.
Well, they didn't even discuss it amongst themselves, so it didn't matter.
They just like
They
adopted
just
it.
approved it.
Yeah.
That was it.
And just.
But I do know there was an issue of a missing payday on calendar B.
Yes.
Which does affect a lot of families. I mean,
Yes.
I had some families, I mean, you're living on those paycheck to paycheck, so that makes a big difference too. So that would be my big factor for choosing. A would be
Two big
a
ones.
teacher paycheck and childcare with the high school and vacation planning and just to be a little more cohesive with the high school, I would choose calendar A and to have the teachers gain that paycheck. I would pick calendar A, but I personally prefer calendar B.
And to be fair to the high school, I know that one of their considerations for starting when they did, if you look at the very bottom where it shows student day count and teacher day count for the two calendars, for calendar A, for students, there's 75 days the first semester and 73 the second semester, so they're pretty even. For calendar B, it would be 71 and 77. And so I know that was one of their key factors for starting earlier, was to keep the two semesters pretty close to the same. And I'm not necessarily advocating it, but I wanted you to know what their thought processes were.
I know the PD days are necessary to get all the training in. My question is does it change the number of contract days on calendar A than what, for this year, than what they've had right now?
It's actually, calendar A brings them in the same number as this year, calendar B would in fact be less. And the contracts are not issued based on days per year, they're based on hours. I had that information on there, and I shared all of that information with the
Okay.
committee, because we're going to talk about that. Part of the conversation with Meet and Confer is going to be about hours, versus days on contract. Because that's a legitimate discussion. It's related to the calendar, but it's not totally dependent on the calendar. So that part is still open for discussion.
But it's not like the 2 additional days each
No.
month are causing an unintentional
No.
pay cut?
No, it's not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
And I have a question regarding the calendar this year and calendar A. That's the same day of this same week that we started this year, right?
Yes.
When the students come to school.
Right.
But is the issue that the teachers are coming back earlier?
It's just that every year, so next year, that Wednesday will be the 28th. And the following year, that Wednesday will be the 27th. And the following year, that will be the 26th. And then the following year, it will be the 24th. So because of the way the calendar shifts, it just keeps shifting it earlier and earlier into July. So at some point, you have to figure out, okay, when are we gonna shift it back the week so that we're not starting, so we're not starting,
4th of July weekend?
Yeah, yes. Ultimately, 4th of July weekend. So, this is a leap year, so it messed with the calendar. It messed with it. And that happens about every 6th year.
Do we have any more comments? Any more discussion? Okay. Item 1.3. Workshop. Yep, 1.3, need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the workshop.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We need that up there, don't we?
Roll call.
Roll call for adjournment.
Doug Lutz,
Yes.
Randy Dubois,
Yes.
Jeannie Borland,
Yes.
Corey Burgess.
Aye. I call to order the regular meeting of the Bullhead City Elementary School District School Board on Thursday, February 20th, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. Secretary, please call roll.
Corey Burgess,
Here.
Randy Dubois,
Present?
Doug Lutz,
Here.
Jeannie Borland,
Here.
Citizens present, if you please sign in at the back of the room. If you'd all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2.5, our call to the public. This is the time that the public may speak to the governing board regarding issues within the jurisdiction of the governing board, and subject to reasonable time, space, and manner restrictions the governing board may establish. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual unless specifically waived by the governing board. At the conclusion of the call of the public, an individual governing board may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. However, the governing board cannot take action on matters that have not been noticed in advance as part of the agenda. We have two for this evening. First, we have Tanya Gold.
Hello, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Tanya Gold. I have worked in our district as a sub for the last 6 years, usually at Diamondback, as my own 5 children were attending there. So it was very convenient. I have had several long-term positions through these years, including my own 2nd grade class all last year and this year until January 6th. As there was not a certified teacher in there, I was hired to come back. As all of you know, this position was filled by an intern, and my last day up there was January 6th. One of my coworkers has taken a position as a Title Aide at Diamondback and continues to work up there daily. However, I recently found out that people had requested me and I wasn't able to sub up there anymore. Several teachers stated that they had asked me to sub, but I could no longer find it on our Ready Sub system. I called HR, talked to Eileen. She said that Dr. Stewart had me removed up there because I was a long-term sub and it was better for the kids. I attempted to reach out to a board member for direction, and she advised me to reach out to a board meeting and directly speak with Dr. Stewart. Since that day, I have completely been removed from the Ready Sub position. I was getting 6 to 8 jobs a day, and now I get 0. This behavior is not in the best interest of these kids. I was very surprised to hear this, as I have been working with no issues for many years. I have always had good reviews from teachers I have worked for and have been requested by numerous teachers. I have been a stay-at-home mom for 12 years, but decided to jump in after spending a lot of volunteer time at school. I figured what better way to give back than to volunteer at my children's school. I fell in love with teaching and the fact that I can make a positive difference in a child's life meant more to me. After knowing that I would be in a classroom, I went to every training I could and prepared things over the summer. I learned so much from other teachers as well as from Mr. Mielek and Ms. Diaz. They were amazing to work for. I wanted to be the best I could for my students and myself, but I also wanted my fellow colleagues to know when they requested me, they wouldn't have anything to worry about in their class. It would run just as if they were there. I took pride in knowing that so many teachers wanted me to be their sub. It's very frustrating that because I contacted one of the board members and she emailed Dr. Stewart with the follow-up, I no longer receive any notifications for jobs, and I am positive I have been taken off the list altogether, which deeply saddens me. Being in the same second grade class for over a year and a half, I have seen so many days when we have had to split up classes because there were not enough subs, or the ones we did have just let our kids do whatever they wanted. We'd come back and our class would be a wreck. It truly makes me rethink who is making decisions for our children and what's right for them. It really makes me upset that I hear you, Dr. Stewart, can I have one more minute? That I hear you, Dr. Stewart, talking about the different ways to keep our teachers, yet you will manipulate situations like this, make things harder for them. Well, let me just say, I have witnessed quite a few amazing teachers leave because they do not feel appreciated. Last year, I watched a teacher break down and cry because her daughter was sick and she couldn't get a sub, so she couldn't leave. This year, before I left, one of my coworkers, her son was sick at home. He needed to go to urgent care. They couldn't find a sub. She had to stay. Last year, the teacher didn't come back. One of my colleagues in second grade this year, she will not be back. We can't keep teachers because you won't give them the help they need. Just think if your child was sick and you needed a sub and couldn't find one. Even one of the new interns that was hired to replace us in second grade this year, which is my cousin, has already resigned. I asked a simple question and I contacted a board member. I have been blackballed from working now, and I wonder why. And you wonder why staff does not come to these meetings or come forward when issues arise. They worry about things like this happening to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Chondo?
Good evening, Bullhead City Elementary School District Board and Superintendent. I wanted to let you know that I had a wonderful meeting with Carolyn about the concerns that I had for the Bullhead City School District with the substitutes and the awards and the snacks. I do understand that Carolyn was very clear to me that her 3 objectives are students, 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 and is it legal and is it ethical? Okay, so basically we have that concept that all 3 of those concerns are all positive. They're legal, it's good moral, and it's good for the kids. So I just wanted to make sure that you've made a review, and I do know that there's been some very active progress. Finding out about the awards. I haven't heard much about the snacks, but I know that that's in the works as well. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I spent extra time and came in and made sure that that was reviewed together as well. And I hope to have more meetings and reviews with that concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.6, the adoption of the agenda. Can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move we adopt
I
the
move we
agenda.
adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Jeannie Borland,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Doug Lutz.
Aye.
Item 2.7, superintendent reports.
Mr. President, in addition to the items that were included in the agenda, I have 3 or 4, and about 6 actually, some additions. One would think that things wouldn't get added after the agenda went out, but they always do. I wanted to add to the building report that last week we opened bids for roof replacements at both Bullhead Middle School and Desert Valley School in preparation to submitting grants to the SFB for that work to be done. In both cases, there was only one bid, and we're not quite sure how that will proceed. The SFB requires 3, and in the past they've been unwilling to accept that there are no other bids or that other bidders have declined. But with the changes in the SFB and who's in charge of the SFB, that may change. So we'll see where that goes. Both of those replacements are in the neighborhood of $260,000 each. So we're hopeful that the SFB will approve those. Secondly, a couple of months ago, the county sheriff's department sent out their deputies to follow school buses as they took students home because drivers are not paying attention and not honoring the fact that when the flashing lights are on the buses and stop signs are out, that they have to stop regardless of which direction they're going. We're in the city, so I have contacted the city police department. We have way too many stops and way too few police to do all of them, but we have 4 particular bus stops that drivers consistently refuse to stop when the buses are stopped and kids are debarking or entering the buses. So I contacted them and they will be making random checks at those bus stops to issue citations to drivers who refuse to honor the bus safety laws. Meet and confer meetings, we've had those. I've had 2 meetings with the certified meet and confer and 1 meeting with the classified. And then as a follow-up with the classified, Transportation invited me to come to their meeting where their representative on the committee presented information to the Transportation Department. So I went to that morning meeting, and that was, I answered lots of questions with those folks. Notices of intent went out to employees on Tuesday. These are the notices each year that indicate whether folks are planning to come back or not. And I know he'll report more on it next month in his regular report, but I was pretty pleased with the fact that when Lance was at the Winter Expo last week, he indicated, besides all the folks who had good questions about tax credits and volunteer opportunities and growing your own in terms of staff, that for the first time in a long time there was not a single complaint about either of our school districts, about the Colorado River schools. So that's kind of encouraging to me. I attended a procurement workshop on Tuesday in Kingman that was requested by one of the business managers at one of the other schools in the county. And that was very helpful and very relevant information about how to make sure we're following the rules for bids, quotes, and procurement of any materials that we use in our district. We're in the process of redesigning that process, pulling it back from ABM, who's been doing that relative to replacement of equipment and fixing things in the district. And we're going to regain the business of putting out the bids, opening them, awarding them, and administering them, making sure that we get done the things that we are contracting to be done. And that will be in place by the 1st of March.
Question on that, Dr. Stewart.
Yes, sir.
That should mean we would receive a credit on our contract with ABM since we're taking up some of their duties.
I think that that's open for discussion. I've been talking with Logan about that off and on since November, and that's certainly a topic for us to discuss. I need to get a handle on how much time is involved in that, Doug, before I can say, okay, you know, we expect this amount of money as a credit. So I'm hopeful that I can have all of that in place before we actually take over all of it. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then finally, I wanted to let you know that on behalf of the leadership team, we thank you for allowing us to go to San Francisco last weekend to a huge conference on learning in the brain that has to do with helping students deal with stress and anxiety in school and in their lives, and how we can help mitigate that in terms of helping them be successful in school. There were 2,500 participants in that conference. The largest it had been in the past was 2,000. So it was a pretty big group on Nob Hill in San Francisco last week.
Any other questions? Moving on, item 2.8, donations. We'd like to thank all of those that donate to our schools and make this possible. Fox Creek was received from Laughlin Chamber of Commerce, special events $1,000. Coyote Canyon received Colorado Women's Council 2 Stop the Bleed kits. Bullhead Middle School from Laughlin Chamber of Commerce also received a check for $1,000. Violin from Kristen Burgess. Wells Fargo, Your Cause, donated $140 and a check for $240. Desert Valley, Your Cause, a check for $7. Diamondback, Donors Choose, supplies for classroom project, Modeling Arizona Amphibians, $250 value. Wells Fargo, Your Cause, $35. And Donors Choose flexible seating for 3rd grade, valued at $541. Thank you very much for everyone in the community who does donate to our schools. You make so many things possible. Item 2.9, board member updates. Do we have any updates from board members? All right. Item 3, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would approve the consent agenda with the exception of 3.2 and 3.3. I would like those 2 items pulled.
I will second that.
Randy Dubois,
Aye.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
Aye.
Item 3.2, administrative reports. Mr. Lutz,
Yes,
some questions?
On Chartwell's report, it mentioned for next year they're looking at going into a supper meal, and I was just real curious what that might entail and if it takes away any student time. So Dr. Stewart, or maybe somebody from Chartwell's is there.
I can answer part of that, Doug. Alex came to me a couple of weeks ago and indicated that we had the opportunity for that. It would not take away any time from our regular school day. As you know, we have 21st century programs going on after school at 3 of our sites, and we have after school tutoring going on 2 days a week at each of the other 2 sites. We currently provide snacks. Chartwell's provides the snacks for those after school programs because it's a heck of a long time from lunchtime until kids get home. What Alex has learned is that we could in fact give those kids a take it with them meal instead of that snack. That doesn't mean they take it home with them. It just means that it would be like a box lunch or a box supper, if you will, but it's much more nutritional. We would get the same kind of reimbursement for that we get for lunches and breakfasts, and can give kids a much better something to eat after school is out. So there didn't seem to be any downside to this at all to me, and so I said, go ahead and look into it.
Look forward to getting further information on that. It sounds like it's probably a pretty positive program. On item 3.3, I was just curious, and hopefully Dr. Stewart can answer this. How many bus aides do we have now? I see we're approving one.
We don't have very many, Doug. I think a handful, maybe 4 or 5. They're on our buses with special needs children. And we pay for those with grant funding.
What grant funds do we use?
ESEA. Let me ask Elisa, she's here.
IDEA.
IDEA funding.
Okay.
This is helping us comply with whatever happens to end up in their IEPs, and does not come out of M&O budget.
We do have approximately 5 or 6, right?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm thinking that's about what we have. We don't have very many.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Were those your only two questions, Doug?
Yes.
Right.
So you need to approve those two.
So we get a motion to approve items 3.2 and 3.3.
So move.
I'll second.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Randy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borley.
Aye.
Item 4.1, the calendar for the fiscal year 2021. Superintendent?
Sorry. As we discussed in the workshop, based on the preponderance of views from the internal stakeholders and the fact that Crushed Governing Board had already approved their calendar, I recommend that we approve calendar A, which is the revised Crushed calendar, to add those days that apply to our district.
Any discussion? I'll make a motion that we approve calendar A for the fiscal year 2021.
I second.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Randy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
No.
Jeannie Borley.
Yes.
Item 4.2, intergovernmental agreements.
Mr. President and members of the board, at the last meeting of the Colorado River Union High School board, they approved the IGAs that you all had approved with minor changes. In the copies that were posted with the agenda, those changes were highlighted in kind of a buff color, yellow if you will. And in almost all cases involve just changing the date of the beginning of the IGAs to January 1st, 2020. If you'd like to look at each one of them individually, you can do that. Or, okay, so, all right, so if we look first, and this is just random simply because of the way it's in my folder. First one I have is the Educational Technology Consortium. And you'll notice it still says draft. We will get that off of there if you all approve, and then we'll get the appropriate people to sign. The only change in that from what you all approved in October is on Roman numeral 3, the term, with the change of the date from July 1st, 2019 to January 1st, 2020. Because these had not been approved, because the IGAs had not been approved by both boards, we proceeded through first semester to function under the previous IGAs. Therefore, any items from the previous IGAs where one district was to be paid by the other district, we did that billing in accordance with the old IGAs. The change in this date then means that these IGAs would go into effect, and any billing either way would be in accordance with these IGAs. Are there any questions about the Educational Technology Consortium?
Nope.
I guess I'd like to see what the previous IGA was.
On this one, it was really very much the same. It primarily involves, Jeannie, the sharing of those two individual salaries. And as I recall, so this is just my memory, but as I recall, it was 50-50 last year. But the other thing that really helps us is, with this consortium, for them, is that we have 3 people in the main office, the main technology office, and then each of the high schools, River Valley and Mojave, each have a tech on their campuses, so there are 5 people. So there are 5 people serving 8 schools, And, you know, so they can be wherever it is that the work needs to be done, especially if it's something that needs to be done right now. Whereas we might not be able to do that if each district had, say, 2 people in that arrangement. So the other thing that happens with this particular IGA in conjunction with the purchasing IGA is that we can get economy of scale. So one of the things that James Mingut is particularly good at is if we need technology equipment, he goes to get bids or quotes depending on the amount of the total amount of money that's involved, based on what we would need for both districts combined. And then then we get a really good price because we're talking about a bigger number. And then the purchase orders actually are cut by each district for their part of that. But it means we only have to do one bid process or one quote process. And I'll give you an example. If we needed to replace, let's say we needed to replace 500 teacher laptops, 250 in each district. I'm just grabbing numbers here. But if each district bid that, we wouldn't get nearly as good a price for 250 as we do for 500. So we can bid one total and then order for each district and get that benefit of scale. And that's just one example.
Question, Mr. President, for Dr. Stewart, or James if he's there, but in James's report, he mentions that River Valley, I believe, has fewer students, and also their pre-lunch went down, so they weren't as eligible for the E-rate funds as they have been in the past. And he also mentioned they've been spending a great deal of time out at the event center, but it sounds like that's pretty much been handled, so that shouldn't be a concern anymore. But I am curious about the E-rate for River Valley that was in his report, if either of them are there to speak to it.
James, you want to come to the microphone and speak to that, please?
Good evening, Mr. President, Dr. Stewart, members of the board, and Mr. Lutz. Specifically concerning River Valley, some changes in the E-rate program 5 years ago gave us a $150 per student spending cap. The first 2 years that cap was in place, we spent a great deal of our E-rate funds putting in a new wireless infrastructure and replacing some network switches. Since that time, River Valley has had some declining enrollment, which means that there's fewer students. So now we're in a gap year between the $150 per student and their new budget formula that they're proposing for next fiscal year. And there's just not a lot of money left over for River Valley. So when we work the numbers, we just can't spend as much money at River Valley through the E-rate program as we would like to, as we need to. But that only covers the Category 2 expenses, which would be the physical pieces of hardware and infrastructure. That spending cap does not apply to the services, the internet services, the networking services, and that sort of thing. So as far as the connectivity goes, we're fine there. We're just not going to be able to spend as much money at River Valley, say, as we could at Mojave. And we kind of have the same thing with Coyote Canyon at the elementary district, because of the way Arizona funds or doesn't fund preschool. We can't really spend any money at Coyote Canyon on Category 2 services. So what we'll have to do is say, when we upgrade equipment at Bullhead City Middle School, then some of that equipment can go over to Coyote Canyon, and we'll just keep kind of rotating it through, kind of like I do at home with my technology. When I get a new cell phone, then one of my daughters gets the old one, and I just keep upgrading to the latest and greatest and passing the previous generation down. Did that help clear that up a little bit, Mr. Lutz?
Yes, it did, James. I appreciate the information. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Any other questions about the technology consortium?
No.
Okay, the next one I have in my stack is the Colorado River Purchasing Consortium. And as I just mentioned to you, this is simply a formality in terms of us being able to get economy of scale. And you notice that we also include Mojave Valley Elementary and Tobacco Elementary in this, because they really benefit from the economy of scale when we can use it to help them out as well. The only change in that document, once again, is the date of initiation of the agreement. The next one I have is Colorado River Special Ed Consortium. And a change that you all made when this was approved in October was removal of the principal of the campus. So you see it in red and then crossed off. That was at your this Bullhead City Elementary School Board's decision-making process. And the high school approved it, putting it back at 60/40. So that's certainly something for you all to discuss. The principal on Coyote Canyon campus, which is where our SPED offices are, where we have our preschool, and where we have our Bullhead City Elementary School District Life Academy. He is the certified administrator on the campus. So if we have issues with the students in the Life Academy that need to be dealt with administratively, he is the one who is legally entitled and responsible for doing so.
We had taken it off last time because we weren't using him.
Well, we were, but I know y'all felt like that we weren't using him at this rate, so.
I felt like we had taken it off because Alicia Burrows is on site and is able to oversee the preschool, and our life skills has 10 kids.
It has 15, and the limit is because of the number of
Right.
programs that we have available. And you are right, for the most part, she does oversee that. However, she is not a certified administrator. And so if we have to do those things, unfortunately, occasionally, we have to do administrative decisions relative to behaviors and those kinds of things. She mostly handles those, but in terms of legalities, it has to be a certified administrator.
Right, and I think when we had talked about that, it was that the kids are still listed under their home schools,
They
so they
are.
could be under their home school principal, that the principal did
They
not
are.
need to be on site.
They
I mean,
are.
40% is a huge amount for 15 kids.
How did they come up with the 60/40?
I do not know.
Is he spending, not here, he's spending 60% of his time there, 40% I'm getting from the school room.
I mean, the thing is, the Mr. Heaton, who is in this position, spends 100% of his, 100% of his job is at Coyote campus. Because he's the administrator for Crushed, Crushed Online, and their Life Academy, and that kind of thing. So, does he ordinarily have anything to do with the preschools? No. Does he ordinarily have anything to do with Bullhead City Elementary Life Academy? No. Does he occasionally, because of circumstances? Yes.
Would that number be this 40%?
I don't think so.
Mr. Heaton to find out what time he spent on that.
And my other question too on this one, we've got a special education co-director under Crushed. From my understanding, based on high school meetings I've been to, that person is on administrative leave.
Yes, that is the current circumstance.
So are we?
We have actually, Mr. Floor and I have a gentleman's agreement, if you will, for use of another individual in the special ed department who is qualified and who is overseeing some of the things at the high school. That's a temporary situation, and pending the decision relative to the high school employee's status, that could change. And I think you understand why I'm being very careful what I say.
Oh, I understand, I just didn't know if they were now utilizing our staff that we're paying 100% for.
No, they're
No.
not.
Going back to the principal of the campus, I thought we did talk about not necessarily using his services, so it would be like nice to know if at some point, how much does he actually have to, you know, take care of those issues for us?
Exactly.
Rather than 40% does seem kind of high.
And if you so choose, this would be one that you would not re-agree to, since there was that change.
And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, we did not have an agreement last year for Coyote Canyon?
For,
We did.
this one is just about special ed services.
Oh,
So
just
yes, we
special
did have,
services.
yes, we did have an IGA for
Okay,
this
okay,
from last year.
we did have one for this.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And those, I don't want to misspeak here. I don't recall on the one from last year, what percentages there might or might not have been for the principal. For the two directors, that was the same as last year. And then, the special ed secretary, was a new one this year. There is an individual who is spending her time, as this is divided.
That's fine, I just didn't know if, because they were lacking in that department right now, if we were covering.
We are helping with that. That's part of the idea of an intergovernmental agreement, is that you help cover the bases when you
Right.
need to. But we couldn't move forward with anything formal until, some other things happen relative
That's
to that
fine.
other position.
Any other questions on that one? All right.
The next one that I have is the Colorado River Educational Transportation Consortium. And the only changes the only change that was made on this one, by the CRUSH board, once again, was the date of the beginning as being January 1st of 2020 as opposed to July 1st of 2019. Any questions about that one? Okay. Next one.
Dr. Stewart?
Yes, sir.
It's gotta be a bit advantageous to the high school to have come up with a new date, because from July 1 up till January 1st, they were going under the old IGAs, which, as I recall, would have cost them fewer funds than the new ones. Is that correct?
That's entirely possible. As I recall as I recall the data that I shared with you all about that, the data were all over the place relative to number of buses, number of miles driven, number of drivers, time spent in repairs. That's entirely possible. I did not break it down by the 6 months when I gave you those data, because I didn't know we were going to be in this situation.
Okay, thanks.
If you're ready to move on, I'm looking at the Coyote Canyon School Use Agreement. The changes that the CRUSH board approved were the addition in number 5, Roman numeral 2, A to B, to add just the phrase "for the term identified in section 3, meaning those monthly rental fees of $4,315.75 to begin on January 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2020.
If our request was for that to be split at a 50-50 rate, how do we know an exact dollar amount for each month?
It wasn't 50-50. You all had me go back and calculate the actual costs relative to the use of campus for utilities and to include utilities and insurance and all of those other things that ended up being those details that were crossed off, and ended up with roughly the 60-40 split with $43,1575. I don't have those details in front of me, but I calculated all of that based on what you all directed me to do when we went from having it be listed with those specifics and just paying for those specific utilities.
I thought we had requested that if they were not going to be paying a rent, that it would be a 50-50 split on everything. That was my understanding.
Well, this was, what you see in front of you is what you approved in the October meeting, other than the part that's been highlighted in buff. I know this was one that went through a number of discussions and iterations.
I feel like this was the same one that was not the one that came through on the agenda, and then when I saw it that night, I had questioned why there was a dollar amount on it.
I can certainly go back and look and check against I thought we had done that, but I will,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy going back and checking. I want it to be whatever it is that you all agreed to.
Because I think the one that we were given in our email was a 50-50, and then that night at the meeting, they went through, and as I was reading through it after it was already approved, I saw that it had been changed to a dollar amount, and I questioned you on it, and you said you would pull it back.
And I do remember that conversation, so I will double check on that one. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
And on this one, have they been paying, what have they been paying from August until January?
50% of the utilities.
And the insurance and the maintenance fees and,
The maintenance agreement with, excuse me, with ABM, they are charged by ABM for an amount for maintenance and custodial on that campus. And, excuse me, and we pay ABM for an amount on that campus. That's been determined by ABM.
okay.
Insurance was not included in the past, and that's part of the reason that you see it there in red. And because that was not part of the previous IGA, we have not been charging them 50% of that. But the other things you see listed there, electricity, water, sewer, refuse, has been charged to them at 50% for the first 6 months of this year.
I guess I would like to see this one get dated back to the beginning.
And this dollar amount is actually $14,000 a year more than last year, according to their meeting.
It is because of,
Insurance.
because we added insurance, but I'm sorry, I don't remember all the other details, but I know you all had requested that we not just base it on the utilities and those things. You wanted some other things built into that. So yes, it is more than they paid last year. It would be if it had been paying that entire amount, the $51,789.
So did they pay half of this 51 already?
No, they have not, because this IGA was not in place. The old IGA was strictly that they were paying 50% of electricity, water, sewer, refuse, and then they paid 100% of any repairs or anything that were caused by high school students on the campus. But the regular maintenance and custodial is already broken out by ABM. That didn't enter in, didn't factor into either this number or the previous agreement.
And it didn't factor in any wear and tear or extra fencing or anything like that that we've had to incur.
True. I will go back and check to see what we actually had for this one. And then the last one is the Colorado River District Office Consortium. And the only change on that is, once again, the date, January 1st, 2020, in place of July 1st, 2019.
We have administrative services, or did we already talk about
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did administrative services. How was this one
I'm
broken
sorry.
out?
that? Okay, I guess they
I must
already did,
not-
I missed it, so.
No, no, I don't think, I think I missed it too.
Oh.
Administrative?
Yeah, I missed it too. Thank you. Okay, so the other one is administrative services. This is essentially district office personnel. And the percentages were, for human resource, was based on the percentage of employees per district. Our district has, if you put all the numbers together, we're 60%, the high school's 40. The director of English language and NEU programs and the hearing officer, that's Chuck's position. And based on the time that he spends in all of those roles combined, it breaks out to about 60-40. Director of Public and Community Relations, because of the nature of the things that Lance does, and the fact that there are sometimes many more events and things to be publicized for the high school, we thought it was reasonable to keep that one at 50-50. And the warehouse manager, we have at 60-40. Once again, the only change that the high school district made was in the beginning date.
I would like to go ahead and move on these individually and not as a whole package. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the Colorado River Administrative Service Consortium.
Second?
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois.
Aye.
Next one is Colorado River District Office Consortium. I'd make a motion we approve.
I second.
Second?
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland,
Aye.
Colorado River Purchase Consortium. I'd move we approve this.
Second.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
Aye.
Colorado River Educational Technology Consortium. I'll move we approve this.
I second.
Second? Second?
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
Aye.
The Colorado River Educational Transportation Consortium. I'll move we approve.
Second?
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
Aye.
Well, there was questions about the wording on the Coyote Canyon one, right?
You can
Yes.
table.
So we want to table that till we know that. And I'd also like to table the SPED to know where the 60-40 came from.
Okay. thank you for your direction.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 5.1, policy regulation, KDBR.
Mr. President, board members, recently we have received several requests for public records. And as a result of that, one in particular initially requested a huge amount of information that could have taken days of work on the part of folks. The information that was being requested was legally and appropriately requested. It just would have involved a lot of time and whatever. It led me back to this regulation that you all approved in August with some changes. Primarily at that time, the change had to do with item B part that you see crossed out that says 35 cents per copy. You increased that from, I think it had been 20 cents maybe, 15 or 20 cents. Had not changed.
Is it 40?
Yes. And then A also at 15.
Okay, so apparently I pulled this one off Policy Bridge, and Kim's been trying to update all the things on Policy Bridge to make sure they actually match what has been approved by the board. So she said it was updated to 10 cents for A and 35 cents for
15
B,
for
or 15 for A and 40 cents for B, sorry. So some changes that I'm recommending here relative to the thought process of the request we have had recently. When I read A again and then looked at B, it struck me that there was nothing that would fall under B. Everything, excuse me, everything would most likely fall under A. The second thing that occurred to me with A is when there's whatever price there is per copy, a copy could be multiple pages. Somebody could say, I want a copy of the student handbook. That might be 50 pages. I don't think it's reasonable that we charge somebody 15 cents for a 50-page copy. So I thought we should clarify that and change the word copy to page. And then since B seemed to be kind of, nothing would apply there, I'm suggesting that we just put everything in A for whatever amount you all want. And then change B, because when I started researching in other districts and at the city and at the county, there is a time charge. So if it takes 6 hours to round up publicly disclosable material, most places will do the first hour, not charge anybody, but beyond that will charge some fee. The number I put there, $35 an hour, is simply based on what we pay people to work for 21st Century Grant after school. And once again, that's open for your pleasure, whatever the board would like to have there. And then I thought we needed to have stated very clearly that publicly discoverable documents not already available in digital form will not be translated into digital format. And the reason for that is if we don't already have it as something that we can pull off the databases, if it's paper copies, not only does somebody have to find them, they have to stand and scan them to put them in digital form. And we are not obligated by law to do that. I changed some of these and recommend the changes to you after consulting with your attorney to work on this wording and to make sure that we are absolutely complying with the availability of public records, but that we're also making it clear that we will only do so for items that are publicly discoverable under the definitions that are commonly used.
To clarify on A, did you say 15 or 50 cents?
Apparently the current policy is 15.
Okay.
And I just put 50 cents there to be a number.
Oh.
You all can decide whatever number you want. This is a regulation. You can change it any way you want, or not change it at all for tonight, but it's not a policy, so it does not have to be read at 2 meetings. It's a regulation, it can be approved in 1 meeting.
I know you gave them to us, but what was the rate for the city and county per page?
The city actually charges 20 cents a page, but they actually encourage everybody to request things digitally. And so they have a rate structure for a CD, you know, if it can be put on a CD, it's $10 a CD. Police reports that you get a copy, a paper copy, it's $10 a report. So they have different fees for different types of discoverable information.
In the county?
We did not get a response from the county.
I thought you did.
Oh, I think I
You
had
sent it
Lance
to
looking
us.
into that.
I saw it.
It was varied by department, I think. There wasn't any
Oh,
one
yeah,
set.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was, they each could decide their own.
That's why I didn't remember.
Yeah. Deal the cards.
Well, I agree with changing it to page per rather than copy. That makes sense.
And I agree with the increase. The last one we received was hours of work, and at 15 cents a copy, that'll cost us. And if it's information that they need, they'll do it. I did a little more research on other school districts and what they're doing to find out, and a lot of them do a hourly rate based on the time that's going to take, and they have a clerical. It was clerical, administrative, and professional. So they have a rate for each that they charge, and it varies depending on who has to pull the information. Is what I saw at several of the districts. I just think by going at 10 or 15 cents a page, we're actually behind the times. And the $35 an hour beyond the first hour would be
Thank you.
I like.
I like that.
So I
And
actually
actually, you could eliminate A altogether if you wanted to, not do it per page. You could just do a per hour kind of thing if you wanted. I mean, you don't have to do one or the other, or both. I
Some
mean, you
people
can do both.
legitimately request 1 or 2 pages. I
Of
think
course.
we
For a
need it
buck.
per page.
Of
I
course.
know.
And then they're out for a buck. But you got somebody that's wanting, 3,000 documents. You've got a lot of time to dig that stuff up that costs us a lot of money. So I actually like what we have here. Any other comments? Okay, I would move that we approve item 5.1 as submitted.
Second.
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
I,
Thank you. In the interest of honesty and fairness, the request that we have that generated this thought process came to us before you approved this. So we will be dealing with that individual, that request, according to the previous regulation, not this one.
All right, item 6.1, future topics.
I'd like to see on executive session that we can discuss superintendent's contract for next year.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely put that on there. That needs to be done by April. So next meeting, we'll do work out well.
I heard that the teachers prefer a day contract preferred over hours, so we can look into that for next year.
And I'll try to have very thorough information for you about that. Brandy sat in as an observer on the Newton Confer the other day and got a taste of the fact that it's pretty confusing right now relative to trying to match the hours that current contracts state with actual days that anybody works. So we want to try to sort that out.
Also, I don't know if it doesn't need to be next meeting, but to start planning ahead for, not the next year, but following year for the calendar, to get ahead of the game, to see when we need to start, and to see if there's accommodations for childcare, if we need to start earlier for the than the high school does and regarding our enrollment and things like that
For the calendar.
for the calendar.
Yeah, and reach out to the high school and tell them, hey, let's get together. So we're not playing catch up. on that.
Okay. Could I suggest one for you as well? Historically in this district, we've had teacher appreciation or employee appreciation, the first Friday in May. And that is a board event. So it probably would be a really good idea if we talked about what you all want to do with that
Oh,
at the next
absolutely.
meeting so that we can get prepared for that.
That'd be great.
Also maybe just some information on substitutes and if we are running short and how the whole process is going, since we had to dismiss some of our long-term subs from their paid positions from the state mandate.
Any other future items? Okay. Item 6.3, date, time, and location of future meetings. We have recommended March 19th, 2020, 5:30 p.m. Is that workshop time? Is that what we're looking at?
The
Spring
week
break
before.
is the week before, yes. This is the week after spring break.
But I won't be here that night. Charles' 16th birthday. Might not be happy about it.
I'm open to
I'm
other days.
After spring break, yeah, we can go another week later if that, or is there anything we have to get done?
I'm good any day that week except the 19th.
Let me look at the calendar, please. There are no school things scheduled for other evenings that week, but at least not district-wide.
Would
We have
another
our
day that week be
calendar.
better?
Yeah, I can do any day except the 19th.
What about Wednesday?
Yeah.
Or even Tuesday,
I'm fine with either.
which is better? Swap.
I have a meeting on the 17th,
Okay,
That's Tuesday, so.
is the
The
18th?
so
18th?
Wednesday.
18th work?
At
Doug, does the
5:30?
18th work for you?
Yes.
Right, 5:30 for a workshop, and
Yep.
And then you'll let us know which items you want on the workshop?
okay, of those, did we have
Do we have
items,
anything
topics
for a
for that for a workshop that you wanted to discuss in the workshop? For future items, or that's all agenda stuff?
That's up to you. It's your workshop and your agenda.
Would the staff appreciation be better in a workshop? Discuss what we wanted to do, get some input. Just ask, I'm just looking at the list we have. The
I
rest
mean,
of it,
the information on substitutes will be information. I can give you a report on that. You know,
That would
that
be the
isn't
meeting.
necessarily an action item, it's a report
Yeah.
item that I'll make sure we have. Staff appreciation is something, if you want input, that would be a good one to have in a workshop.
all right, so we still have on the agenda, but do the workshop on that, so we only need a half hour for that then, with only one item. So the meeting at 6, all right?
Okay?
Do we need to vote on that, or is that just setting the date?
I don't think you have to vote on that.
Right,
You
then-
can just decide.
Thank you. Item 7.1, motion to move into executive session.
I move we go into executive session.
I'll second that.
Corey Burgess,
Aye?
Brandy Dubois,
Aye.
Doug Lutz,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland.
Aye.
Doug, will you be coming with us?
No, I won't be.
No virtual Doug?
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
My husband's calling,
I saw you called,
texting,
but-
Rusty's driving.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
A second?
Corey Burgess,
Aye.
Jeannie Borland,
Aye.
Brandy Dubois.
Aye.
Yes.